Chapter 12, Moles. The little blonde behind the bar at an Essex nightclub hadn't taken a blind bit of notice of him when Carlton was just an ordinary punter. But the moment Carlton turned up as the new doorman, tuxedo, bow tie and bulging biceps, it all changed. Rapidly, it was as if Carlton was wearing some magic aftershave or had undergone a Linford Christie lunchbox transplant. Halfway through the evening, she was slipping cute little half smiles his way. With a half hour to go, she was suddenly wanting to know which was the best taxi firm to use to get her home. Never once to miss an opportunity, Carlton volunteered his services with a nonchalant, "Oh, it's on my way home. I'll see you later." It was, in fact, in the opposite direction. She was waiting in the car park beside his Granada gear when Carlton left. The time-honoured formula, that aura of power and danger that some women seem to find irresistible, had worked the oracle. He'd gone from nondescript, also ran, to macho man with the pulling power of a Ferrari in a matter of hours. Carlton didn't even know what the attraction was himself, but throughout the annals of crime, bad men have always attracted good women. And not so good women. Plenty of evil, manipulating bitches have joined the gold rush to become as dangerous and ambitious as their menfolk. No self-respecting gangster would be seen out partying without a dolly bird on his arm. They are as much a trophy of villainy as the Mercedes, the mansion and the yacht. Now Carlton don't have any of those things. Just a comfortable flat tucked away on the edge of a small Essex village with a second-hand car and enough money for his everyday needs. Not because he hadn't made a nice few bob over the years. No, he'd had it, but he'd blown it. Mostly on women, and he thoroughly enjoyed it too. It all started with that little nightclub blonde who wanted to lift home. She made him realise that there is a lure about the world of muscle, the danger factor of gangland, that some women just cannot resist. From the famed white stiletto scrubbers of deepest Essex to society blue bloods who really should have more sense. Been there, done those. That first pull as a doorman was in fact a bit of a disaster. She was waiting, as agreed, in the car park and they headed off towards Wanstead Flats, where on a good night you can see 20 motors gently rocking away in the moonlight. But the last minute, Carlton changed his mind and headed off towards Beckton, where a load of building work was going on, and he spotted a neat little shagging spot when he was out there with a mate a few days earlier. They pulled into this half-finished cul-de-sac flanked by partly built homes, and Carlton was happy they wouldn't be getting any unwanted company as they got down to business. Carlton had to restrict the passion to 20 minutes because his ever suspicious first wife Karen was at home asleep and expected him home around 4 a.m. The normal sort of clocking off time in the club world. The blonde was manic and they got the motor steamed up in minutes. She was into all sorts of positions, even the Kama Sutra never mentioned, and was really, really up for it. Carlton hoped he didn't disappoint her. He sneaked a glance at his watch as they neared the vinegar strokes. It told him they were run out of time and Cinders needed to make a dash for it before pumpkin time. Carlton switched on the engine a few minutes later and slipped the Granada into gear. He needed a 3-point turn to get him out and started heading homewards. Forward, back, forward, then straight down a mud-filled ditch left by the workmen. Carlton got out and saw his rear wheels up in the air. Fuck it, fuck it, fuck it. Carlton shouted, "It's all your fucking fault." Poor cat, it wasn't her fault at all. Carlton knew he had to try to get out of this predicament or face the wrath of the long-suffering Karen. Carlton trudged onto the building site and grabbed some scaffolding planks. He wedged them under the wheels and got back in the car. Vroom! They edged forward. They were on the move. Then he realised that he'd end up with the front wheels on one side of the ditch and the back wheels on the other. Fuck it, fuck it, fuck it. Then out of nowhere came a voice and a torch in his way. The site security man had been watching everything with some bemusement. Well, not totally everything, he hoped. "Need some help?" he asked. "Never more," Carlton said. So the pair of them collected up as many planks as they could and formed a sturdy little bridge under the motor, revved her up and away they went. The blonde got the quickest drop off in history and Carlton crept into his home and washed the mud and crap off his clothes and shoes. "You're late. Anything wrong?" came a sleepy voice from the bedroom. "You're never going to believe this, but..." and the excuse factory was rolling one out. This time, Carlton said, some lunatic had swerved in front of him and forced him into a ditch, and he had to get help pushing it out. She swallowed it that time, and the next, and the next. But after 7 years of living together, one child, and 1,000 excuses for the late nights, for the lipstick smudges and the lingering perfume, for sometimes never coming home at all for days on end, Karen finally had enough and kicked him out. But Carlton knew by then, as he was drawn deeper and deeper into gangland, and more dependent on the use of steroids, there was this dangerous chemistry at work, which made pulling new women absurdly easy. As soon as flocking around the hard cases, Carlton knew, Big Bat Tape being a classic example, like moths to the candle flame. And now Carlton was into 2-timing, 3-timing, 4-timing, with an endless succession of women. He supposed that because he was in a violent world, women thought that he would be a violent lover, throwing him around the bedroom like Tarzan, having passionate sex up against the wardrobes or wherever. If that was their turn on, they'd have been sadly disappointed. Carlton was always gentle in bed. He cared about the women's emotions. He cared that they got satisfaction too. Carlton got enough violence at work. He didn't need it in the bedroom. The continual use of bodybuilding steroids, as he said before, made his sexual appetite insatiable. Carlton lost count of the number of casual encounters he'd had. At 5'9" tall and built like a brick shithouse, Carlton was no film star. Didn't matter a damn. Carlton once went to visit a mate of his on the outskirts of Chickwell to discuss a motor he was interested in buying from one of his neighbours. He lived in a classy neighbourhood in a birds of a feather sort of way. You know, a few dodgy ones here and there among the stockbrokers and the admin, and Carlton was introduced to the neighbour's wife. A nice looking woman in her 30s and well turned out in designer gear. A bit of style. Nothing much was said. It didn't need to be. The looks were enough. Carlton made a point of leaving his phone number in case she or her husband wanted to discuss the car. Well, that was his excuse anyway. The next morning, the phone woke him. By midday, they were in bed together. That was quick, Carlton said. Yeah. When I see something I want, I just go for it, she replied. A pleasant afternoon ended an hour before her husband was due back from his city office, believing that the little woman had done nothing more interesting with her day than prepare a pasta bake for dinner. Carlton knew this one was too hot. He never went back. He doesn't want to spend hours boasting about conquests, but one embarrassing encounter Carlton recalls was at the room at the top in Ilford. He'd been on the door all evening. They'd had a spot of bother with a couple of hard cases from Romford. It was settled in their favour, but not before one of the likely lads had got a bloodied nose and broken wrist. The fracas seemed to excite a redhead sitting at the bar. He swore he'd had a glimpse of her knickers at least 4 times as she kept crossing her legs seductively. She was waiting at closing time, usual chat up. Can I give you a lift home? Yes, lovely. Carlton was switched over to supervising the customers leaving in the lift as the club was over a big store. There was no alternative. The lift arrived. Just him and the redhead were waiting. In they jumped and were straight in to a passionate clinch. Carlton knew that a key in the control panel would stop the lift at any floor he liked on the way down. Carlton flicked it. They stopped at 7. She'd unzipped his trousers and was down on her knees. Ah, 7th heaven. But now Carlton was panicking about other customers he knew would be gathering on the upper floor to get in the lift and make their way home. Carlton could hear people shouting, "What's going on? Come on, we want to get home." So Carlton thought he'd best flick the go key back on and drop the redhead down at the next exit, then zoom back up for the punters. But unfortunately, the urgent pressing of the top floor button had overridden the down signal, and in an instant, they were back outside the club entrance with the door sliding back to reveal a blushing doorman hastily doing up his flies and a flustered redhead busily wiping her face with a hanky. There must have been over 100 clubbers there who knew exactly what had been going on. In gangland, image is all important. Your mysteries is often your status symbol, your trophy that shows you're doing the business. Making a nice few bob. You got the 4-wheel drive and luxury home conversion in a couple of acres of security fencing in Essex, a few ponies grazing, a pair of Rottweilers. Quite often an unsuspecting wife happy not to wonder too much about where the bundles of readies for the designer kitchen and Neff oven are coming from. It was like you wanted the best of both worlds. The loyal wife at home with the kids, the piece of totty to impress your underworld cronies. And in his case, there was one simple reason why Carlton never involved his wife or any of his long-term partners in his business activities. they'll be far too vulnerable. One sure way for an enemy to hurt you hard will be to go for your wife. If you keep her away from a danger zone, she's not going to be susceptible. If she's up front, part of your business world, she's in danger. If you're on the door at a busy club, she'd be a big distraction because you'd always be looking out for her and not doing your job properly. At home with the kids, she's safe. He knew it, sounds chauvinistic, but it's practical. So it's the totty, the girls who lap up all the danger and excitement of gangland, who generally get to see the bright lights and the gangsters get-togethers in dimly lit clubs. That's okay as long as the tail doesn't start wagging the dog. Carlton has seen time and time again how girlfriends start getting their claws in, how they try to influence important decisions, how they try to exercise their own likes and dislikes about different members of a firm. One girl was sleeping with a gang boss Carlton knew used to go out with one of the underlings in the firm, but they'd fallen out over some fucking jewellery. She moved up on the gangland social ladder, so to speak. One night during pillow talk, she said, "You know that Dave, he told me he was going to shoot you." Whether it was true or not, the cat would be well and truly among the pigeons, and poor Dave's future would be looking exceptionally dodgy. It's amazing the loyalty that some of gangland's women can show, and frightening how fickle others can be. Carlton's seen them switch devotion to some of the most horrible bastards you're ever likely to encounter. Yet others seem to make that switch of allegiance at the drop of a hat, and for the weirdest of reasons. Carlton had known several who have not only ditched a long-standing boyfriend when he's ended up in the nick, they've jumped into bed with a copper who nicked him. He thinks perhaps there may be a parallel attraction of cops and crooks. They are both involved in danger, intrigue, the thrill of the chase, just operating on different sides of the fence. There's a very fine line between a good policeman and a good crook. They think the same. It's the hunter and the hunted. He thinks women find both real turn on. A lot of villains live double lives, partly out of choice, partly out of necessity. For most of his adult life, Carlton was splitting himself in two, torn apart trying to be all things to each woman. It's a recipe for disaster at the end of the day. While Carlton was with Denny, he was having a long-standing relationship with Lynn. He was living in two worlds. Denny and the baby were his cornerstone, his sanctuary from all the madness, the violence, the surging drug culture that engulfed his life. When Carlton went home to her, he shut the door and became Mr. Normal. The big hunk, sitting at the table, being a dad, being a husband, pretending there was no danger out there. But with Lynn, it was different. Lynn was part of his working life. She was streetwise, tough. They were together in the darker side of life, where knife-ins, beatings and drug overdoses were everyday occurrences. Lynn knew how to handle herself in violent and dangerous situations. She was very much part of his security setup. She was the one who searched the girls for weapons and drugs. And make no mistake, the female clubbers were more than willing to carry parcels of V's or coke into a club, either for themselves or to sell, or to hand over to a fucking boyfriend to serve up. And many weren't averse to carrying a blade down their pants to protect the stash. Lynn walked the walk and she talked the talk. If a big fight suddenly went off in a club, she was there. Fearless, composed, brilliant at looking after hysterical women, calm in an ugly situation, preventing worse bloodshed and violence. She also knew when to stand back. She knew when a situation was becoming too fraught for her own safety, and it was time perhaps to leave quietly through the back door and make for the car while matters were sorted. When they returned to the flat, Carlton had bought for her. They had a different kind of refuge, a different currency between them, a dependency on each other's strengths and abilities, but nonetheless, a beautiful, gentle relationship that was more than a cheating bastard like him deserved. It was important that Carlton had the Mr. Normal image with Denny in Brentwood, even though he never passed for the average bank manager. Carlton didn't want people to know what he really did for a living, especially if he'd been involved in a bit of naughtiness. To the neighbours, Carlton was just in security. That way, they wouldn't give Denny a bad time. There wouldn't be the nudging and pushing and whispering at the supermarket, "Oh, she's a villain's wife, you know." She was the one who had to take the kids to school. She didn't want to feel uncomfortable every time she stepped out of her own front door. Carlton owed her that. Once a year, they'd take the kids down to their caravan at Clacton and they'd have a lovely 6-week holiday on the beach. But Carlton could never stay more than a few days at a time with them. The lure of the nightlife, the excitement of gangland, the adrenaline rush was too much. Carlton was up and down to Clacton throughout the school holidays. 1 minute, cuddly daddy, buying ice creams, paddling in the sea, The next, he was back to London, heavy drug scene, club doors to protect, faces to meet, business to discuss. The influence of gangsters' moles can never be underestimated. Carlton's seen the hardest of men break down and cry over a woman. He'd known one man try to kill himself when his mistress said goodbye. The toughest of gangsters are capable of deep emotions that can be destroyed by women. Equally, women have the capacity of inflicting great damage. There never was a true saying than hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Pillow talk is the most dangerous of all romantic activities, and it's betrayed many a villain over the years. A crook is likely to tell his mistress a lot more about his activities than a wife. When the day comes for them to part company, she has confidences to betray that can spell danger to his lifestyle, that might even land him in jail. They'd all like to think it would never happen to them, but look at the number of cases where a police prosecution relies on the word of a disgruntled gangster's mole, spilling the beans to get revenge. They can really fuck you up. Carlton's policy was always to be a bit careful over what he said. If it was serious stuff, the kind of things they didn't need to know about, he'd play it close to his chest. With Denny and Lynn, Carlton had two of the most loyal women you could ever wish for. But he still had to play around. Not because he didn't love them, and Carlton did love them equally, but because he was driven by this terrible sexual urge that came from using steroids month after month, and he couldn't keep his hands off other women. He remembers several times going to bed with 3 or 4 different women within 24 hours, and hopefully leaving them all with a smile on their face. He was totally selfish. He wanted more and more sex. He was notching up women like a Wild West gunfighter. He was like a schoolboy in a sweet shop and was helping himself to all the smarties going. But that's the way it was. The club scene, the underworld, are male-dominated zones. It's the jungle culture, the Lion King syndrome. Not just one female in tow, but 3, 4, or 5 at a time. It could be ferocious at times. You want them all. You want to protect your harem. You see someone moving on your territory and bang, they're out. Carlton liked to stop it before it became a problem though. If he saw someone making a move on any of his women, he'd walk over and say, "Do yourself a favour, mate, or you're going to get hurt." That was usually enough. Presence, aura, image was so important in that world. Like street actors putting on a show. Who's the hardest? Who's the most dangerous? Whose firm is the biggest? There was something sinister, the ever-present threat of danger hovering over things, that made it like an aphrodisiac cocktail for some women. And many drank deeply. Carlton was a 2-timing bastard and was not proud of it. But he can put his hand on his heart and say that he's still good friends with most of the women who have been important in his life. Especially Karen, Denny and Lynn. No grudges there, he hoped. His current girlfriend Kelly is only 24 and Carlton was 42, so he supposed he could be accused of cradle snatching. But she's got a wise head on a young body and she's been a fantastic help in sorting his life out. She knows all his strengths and all his weaknesses and always there when Carlton needs her. She understands his lifestyle and she knows what he has to do. He won't let her down like he had let down so many other women before. He can't believe now how crass he was with his first wife, Karen. Carlton was only 17 when they fell in love and got married. A couple of days after walking out of Tottenham Magistrates Court, where he'd been up on an ABH charge as a result of soccer hooliganism. Carlton told her, "Look, love, West Ham is my life. My football and my mates come first, and you come second." He couldn't actually believe he was like that, but that was the reality of the situation back then. Soccer and soccer violence was more important to him than his wife. Carlton told her, "Don't you ever try and stop me." So poor Karen found herself sitting at home all alone every Friday night to Sunday, week in, week out, while Carlton was out causing bedlam at football grounds around the country. But she accepted that. Carlton didn't actually know how well off he was. Karen was a good, straight woman, his first real love, not interested in villainy in any way. He was working down a dock earning regular money, they had a house and a mortgage, and then baby Carly came along. Carlton should have been content with that. It's a lot more than many men achieve, but from the moment he started on the club doors, once he got the adrenaline rush, once he discovered how the women flocked around, Mr. Danger Man, he lost it. From being a football thug with an aimless delight in causing havoc, Carlton was suddenly a superhero in his mind. standing supreme on the doors, believing he was God's fucking gift to women. So it went on for most of his years in the muscle game. The first job at Maru's in Stratford came with built-in violence. The regular doorman Kieran, a big lump of a rugby player, had been knocked out by a firm from Custom House, which included a semi-pro boxer. And the club were looking for a replacement, and they knew more trouble was brewing. Carlton was regular in there, and one of the security blokes rang him and asked him if he would like to work the busy Saturday night stint. He said, how much? 40 quid. So Carlton reported for duty, not really knowing what to expect, but full of anticipation, ready for anything. Suddenly there was about 20 geezers at the door, and things started getting nasty. But he recognised two of the mob as brothers he'd known for years. It was Dave, a shot fighter, who'd knocked Kieran Spark out the previous night. Would Carlton be an extra right hook now he was there as the new bouncer? They recognised him in time. Hello, Carlton. How you doing? I'm a new doorman. Peace broke out. Trouble was avoided. The club were well pleased. And he got respect. Carlton was hooked on the buzz of it all. And it wasn't long before the additional perks of the job in the form of pretty blondes, brunettes and redheads made him realise this was the life Carlton wanted. Not sweating in the bows of a ship at the Royal Albert Docks. Carlton was no great Adonis, and his battle scars are evident for everyone to see. But the change in the attitude of women once Carlton started door work was nothing short of remarkable. Barmaids, waitresses, dancers, drinkers, whoever, were not just available, but gagging for it. Moros carried a staff of around 15 girls, and they all wanted to be seen leaving with a doorman. An after-hours shag was regarded as a regular, everyday bonus. And if Carlton could get 3 or 4 door shifts a week at £40 a time, Carlton could make a damn sight more than working as a ship's engineer. 3 sessions netted him more than Carlton got in 7 days in the docks. So that was it. Carlton was muscle for hire from then on. With his newfound status came attitude. You may not realise it, but you get that swagger, that arrogance that sets you apart from the flock. And it's not always a good thing. It makes you a nasty person. It may pull the birds, but it's disastrous for your home life. Karen, Denny, Lynn, and many more all found to their cost they were playing second fiddle to his ego as Carlton strode upwards and onwards into violence and crime.